Welcome to today's math lesson. The math lesson is 7.4. You're going to need this red-violet color, and you can push pause on the video to get your journal to set up like this. We're talking today about number patterns. And what a pattern is it's a pattern is something that shows relationships between numbers. So we're going to be looking at different sets of numbers and trying to find relationships between them. We're going to do that one way using an in and out table or a function table. And what an in and out table is you have an x variable and you have a y variable, or a number that is x and a number that is y. And we're trying to figure out what the rule is or what's happening. So we call this an in and out function table. Let's go ahead and try something. If I put a 2 in the x spot, and I tell you that if x is 2, then y is 6. And if 12 is x, then y would be 36. So with these two sets of numbers, I want you to take a look at it and decide if you can find a relationship. Basically, it's like the robot voice. How did I get from 2 to 6? I added 4 maybe. It could be that I times by 3. It could be that I added 4. There's a lot of different ways you can get from 2 to 6. But the rule is going to be the same for each pair of numbers. So how did I get from 12 to 36? Did I add 4? No. Did I multiply by 3? Yeah. So to get from 2 to 6, I times by 3. And to get from 12 to 36, I times by 3. So we're thinking that maybe the rule between these numbers, or the pattern here, is that when you take x and you multiply it by 3 and you get y. That's what we think, right? Let's try another one. What if I told you that x is 5 and y is 15? Does that fit the same rule? How did I get from 5 to 15? I times by 3. So it does fit the same rule. So if I take x and I multiply it by 3, then I should get y. Does that make sense? Okay. What if I tell you that I'm going to put in 0 for x? Well, you follow the rule so that you can tell me what the output number is or what y is. Well, I take x, which is 0, plug it in here, and I times it by 3. 0 times 3 is 0. Okay, what about if I take a fraction like 1/3? Can you still get out a y number if you use a fraction? The answer is yes. So we just plug it in. I take 1/3 times 3. 1/3 times 3. Remember, to times something by a whole number, we throw 1 underneath it and we multiply straight across. So I have a 1 times 3 and a 3 times 1, but also look, 1 on top, 1 on bottom. 3 on top, 3 on bottom, those are all going to cancel down to 1. But you could just go like this. It's 3/3. And what is 3/3? 1 whole. So that's how you do an in and out table. You can do a tall vertical, which is what we just did, in and out table with x variables and y variables. Or the table can be turned this direction, going left and right, like this. You can have x on top and y on bottom. In this case, I'm going to give you a bunch of sets of numbers, and we're going to try and figure out what the rule is. So again, when I say what is the rule, it means what is the relationship, or what is the pattern between these numbers. Okay? All right. do this. 2, I put in 2. Oh, I'm going to separate these out first. So I made 1, 2, 3 lines, giving us 4 tall columns. Okay, so X's are on top, Y's are on bottom. So if I put in 2 and I got out, I don't know, 7. And then what if I put in 4? And I get out 9. Put in 6. And I get out 11. What is the rule happening here between X and Y? So when I put in X, what do I have to do to that number to get Y? How did I get from 2 to 7? I added 5, or I times by 3 and then added 1. There's lots of different things you could do. Let's try it. Does it work to times by 3 and add by 1? 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 would be 13. So it can't be that. Let's go back and try the plus 5. 2 plus 5 gives me 7. 4 plus 5 gives me 9. So does 6 plus 5 give 11? Yeah. So the rule is I take my X number and I add 5 to it to get Y. That was the rule here. Okay. I'm going to give you a fraction here at the end. See how you do. What if I put in 1/2? The rule is still the same. I put in 1/2, I add 5 whole. Well, if I have half a candy bar and then someone gives me 5 more, I end up having 5 1/2. That's pretty easy. So the rule in that one was pretty simple, okay? So this is called an in and out function table, where you're looking for relationships between the X and Y variables and the rule for what is happening. All right, the next thing we're going to study is how to simply look at a list of numbers and to find a pattern. So we're going to write this. With patterns, comma, you will either have to find the missing numbers or find the rule. So they're either going to tell you the rule and you have to find missing numbers, or, like Ms. Fisher just practiced with you, or they're going to give you a bunch of numbers and you have to find the rule. Which one do you think is easier? Finding the rule or finding the missing numbers? What do you think about that? Which one is easier, finding the rule or finding missing numbers? I actually don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. It's whatever you like to do. I particularly like to find missing numbers. I think that's a little easier, but a lot of people like to find the rule. So it'll be interesting to find out what you end up liking most of all. Okay, so let's move on to a different section down here, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna write the first 5 terms of a pattern. A term is just a number. Write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 2 and then adds 3. Okay, so those are the rules right here. Write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 2 and then adds 3. So they want me to write the first 5 terms, which means I need 5 numbers for my answer. So I have 5 places where I'm going to be writing numbers. It says it begins with 2. So I put the first number here as 2. And then it says, and then adds 3. So it means in between each number, I'm adding 3. So it says to get to the next number, draw an arrow there. To get to the next number, I had to add 3. So if I have 2 and I add 3 to it, I get 5. So the next number in this pattern is 5. I continue to follow the pattern, follow the rule. So I then take the 5, draw an arrow over to the next line, and I add 3 to 5. It becomes 8. And I keep going. Will you keep doing the arrows, the +3 arrows, and then finding out what the term is? Go ahead and try it. Next number after 8, if you're adding 3 to it, should be 11. And then after that, if you take 11 and you add 3, it should be 14. Oops. Okay, so the first 5 terms of this pattern are, say them with me, 2, 5, 8, 11, 14. 2, 5, 8, 11, 14. Okay, so let's take this a step further. Now we're going to write an expression. Remember, an expression does not have an equal sign. Write an expression for the 6th term of the pattern. Expression means tell me how I would get there to figure it out. You can't just say 14 plus 3. Even though I know that's how I'm going to get there to the next one, I'm going to show you that I started at 2. The expression would be, I started at 2. Then I added 4 to get my second number. And then I added 4 to get my third number. No, not add 4, sorry. I added 3. I added 3 to that. So I started at 2, then I added 3 to get 5, I added 3 to get 8, I added 3 to get 11, and I added 3 to get 14. And then I would have to add 3 again to get the next number, right? Because this is the first number, second number, third number, fourth number, fifth number. So I'd have to add it one more time to get that 6th number. Well, that can look really confusing, so this is also a really cool thing you can do. I can say it like this. I can start at 2, and then I can add that to how many 3s did I end up doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I could take the number 3 5 times. Because isn't 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 the same as 3 times 5? Yeah, it's 15. So that's also another expression. Remember, we don't use an equal sign if we're doing expressions. So you can answer it as 2 plus 3 times 5. Or you can say 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. Okay. Well, that's not all we have to learn, unfortunately. This is kind of like baby stepping into what we're going to be doing. I think it's really fun, though, to remember to use the in and out function tables, and then to know how to look for rules and what's happening between numbers. And then it's also good to be able to know how to take a pattern and do what's being asked of you and to find the missing terms or to find the missing numbers. So that's always a really good skill to know. But one thing we need to know, and we're going to put an arrow turning the page, is that patterns, number patterns, make pairs. Okay, so patterns can make pairs. And then put an arrow going to the side. And then you're going to go ahead and turn your journal page. Patterns can make pairs. Again, we're going to go ahead and turn our journal. And we're going to get ready to be doing a lot of things with numbers and relationships. So you need to find some pages in your workbook. You'll need to listen carefully because I want you to get them quickly and only push pause on your video and then come back. So the pages I want you to find are pages 291 and 293. So I'll say that again. Pages 291 and 293. Push pause on the video until you get those things. The first thing we're going to look at is, well, first of all, put your name and number on it. So you should have pushed pause on the video if you don't have this stuff out yet. I'm on page 291. And they're just kind of showing you what a different expression is. We kind of looked at doing something like this in our journal. See, it was 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Or you can do 3 plus, and then they took it 4 times. So they just moved the 4 into parentheses and multiplied it by the 2. So maybe we had better just practice like numbers 1 and 2 just to make sure we know how to do this. It says, write 2 expressions for the next term, the 6th term in the pattern. 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Well, what's happening here in between the 3 and 5? They're adding 2. So that's what's happening, but we begin with 3. So we'll start it with 3 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. You got to do that multiple times because you got to get to each term. So when I add 2, I get the second term. When I add 2 more, I got the third term. When I add 2 more, I get the fourth, and then add 2 more to get the fifth. So first term, second term, third term, fourth term, fifth term. But what they're looking for, pick up your red, violet, and circle in the directions, circle the phrase, the 6th term. So right now, I would only have 5. See? So I'd have to add 2 more to get to the 6th. Okay. Or it can be represented as starting with 3 and then adding how many groups of 2? It's adding 5 groups of 2. That could be a way to do it. What is the 6th term? Because letter B says, write the 6th term. So if the numbers were going 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, you should know that it's 13. So write 13 on the line. Okay, number 2. Write the first 5 terms of a numerical pattern that begins with 5 and then adds 5. Okay, so I'm writing the first 5 terms. Take your red, violet, and write 5 dashed lines. It begins with 5 and then adds 5. So your first number is where it begins. So you put a 5 on the first line, and then you just add 5 each time. This one's really easy. 5, 10, 15, 20, you get it, 25. But now we want to write an expression for the 6th term of the pattern. Okay, well I began with 5. I'm going to do the multiplication one. I think it's easier to do that. And how many groups of 5 would you keep getting if you needed a 6th term? Well, you start with 5, and then you'd be doing plus 5, plus 5, plus 5, plus 5, plus 5. You'd have 5 groups of 5. And the 6th term would be So you can figure that out. Why is it 30? Oh, because 5 times 5 is 25, plus 5 would be 30. That makes sense. We're not going to do number 3. I think you get how to do that. There are problems like this definitely on your homework, so if you need help, you can refer back to these problems or your journal. All right, turn the page to 292. On page 292, we're going to be seeing a lot of problems that we are actually going to be cutting out and using, okay? So I want you to be very careful about where you take the notes on this because I want to use this information in our journal. So I'm going to move my journal to the side. And we're going to be using number 4, so stay within the boundary lines and don't write too far to the sides, okay? All right, it says write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 2 and then adds 2. That's pretty easy. So the first line begins with 2 and then adds 2. So if it adds 2, what would the next number be? 4. You're going to catch on to this pretty quickly. Okay, write the first 5 terms of a pattern on letter B that begins with 4 and then adds 4. So you have to get the beginning number and then follow the rule. See if you can get it all the way to the end of that. Now it says, circle the corresponding pairs of terms in the patterns. How does each term in the top pattern compare with the corresponding term in the bottom pattern? Okay, so we are going to talk right now about corresponding pairs. That's what's coming up with these relationships. A corresponding pair is like an X and Y. Okay, so we circle corresponding pairs with your red violet. It's always one X and one Y. So a corresponding pair in this situation looks like this. The top line would be my X. The bottom line would be my Y. So that's one set of corresponding pairs. The next set would be 4 and 8. What would the third set of corresponding pairs be? That's right, it'd be 6 and 12. Then the following would be 8 and 16, and then 10 and 20. So you're circling all of those, thinking about what is their relationship. So now I figured out 2 patterns, and now I'm looking at them in a different way to figure out corresponding pair relationships. These are all called, go ahead and write it, corresponding pairs. And now it's asking me to look at those relationships and find out the answer to this question. How does each term in the top compare with the term in the bottom? So you're looking at the top compared to bottom. So let's just look at 2 and 4 in the first one. Well, the top number is what of the bottom number? It's half of the bottom number, right? So we're going to write the top number is half of the bottom number. Will you make sure that that really worked for all of those pairs? So it worked for 2 and 4. Does it work for 4 and 8? Does it work for 6 and 12? Does it work for 8 and 16? Does it work for 10 and 20? Yes, it does. So that's pretty cool. All of these top numbers were exactly half of the bottom numbers. Okay, now I want you to rethink your thinking and say, okay, what about how does the bottom term compare with the top term? So I look at the bottom and I look up and I think, how does the bottom compare? Well, you start by saying the bottom term is 2 times greater than the top term, right? Or double, whichever one you want to say, but I'm going to say 2 times greater than. You could say double. The bottom term is double the top term, but I'm saying it a little more mathematically correct by saying the bottom term is 2 times greater than the top term. Don't you wish that was the bell to be done with the lesson? It's not. Hate to break it to you. Okay, that looks pretty good. Will you take a pair of scissors and quickly cut off all of number 4, all the work we just did for number 4. Be careful, because I still want to be working. So I just basically cut mine like this. I have number 4 here, and then I have number 5 and 6. So put number 4 to the side for right now, and let's just work on this. Don't throw away your number 4. Let's look at this. Let's follow the rules. It says write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 9 and then adds 9. So we know our beginning number. Go ahead and write it on the first line and then adds 9. Finish that pattern all the way to the end. And part B, write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 3. So write your beginning number and then adds 3. So this time we're doing multiples of 3. So, but you have to begin with 3 and then adds 3. Circle the corresponding pairs. Go ahead and circle the words corresponding pairs with your red violet again. Of terms in the patterns. So let's go ahead and do that. Remember, corresponding are X and Y. Let's write X and Y by them. Okay, so I circled the corresponding pairs in these patterns. And how does each term in the top compare with the term in the bottom? So we're looking at top to bottom, 9 versus 3, or 18 versus 6. You have to word these correctly because they specifically ask you to make the comparison in a specific way. So let's go ahead and begin by saying the top term is. And what is the top term? 9 versus 3, or 18 versus 6. The top term is 3 times greater than the bottom term. Is that true clear all the way at the end? Look at the 45 and 15. Is 45 3 times greater than 15? Yeah, it is. So the top term is 3 times greater than the bottom term. And now you're going to go, how does the bottom term compare with the top term? So look at the bottom. Those ones are smaller than the top. So now you're comparing 3 to 9 or 6 to 18. So you start by saying what they're asking for. The bottom term is. And if the bottom numbers are smaller than the top numbers, it means you're going to be putting a fraction here. So the bottom numbers are not 3 times greater than that. They're a third. It's going to be a unit fraction. So 3 is 1/3 of 9, right? Because how do you get from 3 to 9? You have to times by 3. So that means that this is a third of that number. Is 9 a third of 27? Yeah. Because how did I get from 9 to 27? Times by 3. So it's a third. The bottom term is 1/3 of the top term. Pretty great. We're not going to do number 6, so we're going to cut out number 5. Remember, you already have a number 4 cut out. And we're going to kind of cut off the edges, come back to wherever you put your number 4 and cut off the edges, but I want you to keep the title on the patterns and relationships, the orange title. Keep that. So I should see these two things. I should see patterns and relationships, and then I should see the number 5. Again, that's almost the bell to be done with the first video. I almost timed it right. So I have a number 4 and I have a number 5, 2 different pieces. And I'm going to be gluing that into my journal on the back side. So we just did number patterns on the front, all those notes, and then we turned the page. So this is the back side of the journal. And I'm going to get number 4 glued in and number 5 glued in underneath that. Remember not to cover any of the holes, so be careful with that. And then I'll see you in the next video. Those things should be glued in before you come to the next video.